A couple weeks ago, I brought you the all-new BMW X2. We went over absolutely everything there was to know about that vehicle, the pluses, the minuses, and everything in between. But this week, we have the chance to drive its brother. This, my friends, is the 2024 BMW X1 M35i, the M Performance model in the subcompact luxury crossover space from BMW. Priced at just over $70,000 Canadian with delivery and about $57,000 in the US, this comes extremely well equipped. Under the hood is a very similar power plant to what we just saw in the X2, but it makes more power. BMW rates this 2-liter twin-power turbo inline-4 engine with 300 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. It's the same torque numbers that we saw with the xDrive 28i out of the X2, but with the boost mode, you can get up to 313 horsepower. Now this also uses the 7-speed Steptronic automatic transmission. Previous generation we used a dual clutch, but we didn't get the M35i. This was exclusive to the X2 for the previous generation, but now those who are looking for a proper SUV shape rather than the coupe can get the M Performance model. Now this vehicle does differ quite a bit from the X2 that we drove. The front end and rear end are quite different, unlike the BMW X3 and X4 or the BMW X5 and X6 that really are essentially the same look on the outside. One's more of a coupe and the other's an SUV. The X1 and X2 are quite different on the outside. Personally, I like the more traditional SUV look, especially if you're buying an SUV, but I do like the way that this vehicle looks. Headlights are a little bit different than we saw in the X2, and then around back, again, you're getting that much more traditional SUV look, but I love the taillights, love the headlights. Everything is really sharp on this vehicle, but what really stands out to me is this paint job. This is Blue Bay Lagoon metallic paint, exclusive to the X1. You can't get it on the X2, and it's nice that BMW has the guts to offer fun colors on some of their vehicles. I think that this would look just as good on an X7 as it does on this X1. So let's talk a little bit about some of the mechanical bits about this vehicle. Out back, we do have two twin-tipped exhausts. So you do get quad exhausts on the back. That is a signature trait that you would get with a proper M car. You also have the illuminated M Sport seats. They're Alcantara with the Vaganza synthetic leather. They're comfortable enough, especially for a big guy like me. You might think that they wouldn't be, but they are a little bit more race oriented and they are comfortable enough, but it is an option that you can get with this when you go up with the M Sport Pro package. And then we also have a mechanical limited slip differential built into the transmission. And what that means is it will limit the different rotational speeds between the front wheels, allowing for better agility and handling dynamics. Because the X1 is a front wheel drive bias xDrive system, having the limited slip differential control the front wheels is a plus to help with this vehicle, but you can send power to the rear wheels obviously, as it is BMW's xDrive system. So you're going to get a little bit more front feel, as we discussed when we featured the X1 a few years ago. You know what's better than having a front limited slip differential built into the transmission? Visiting our all-new merch store. You can head over to the link in the bottom of your video. You'll see some different t-shirt designs there. We've updated them with new designs, including our WTF is a mile shirt, our Brave Little Toaster shirt, as well as some unique stuff for our Canadian fans, including the new 407 International Speedway shirt. All of those shirts will ship within a few days of ordering them, and all of the proceeds go in to help make more content here on Test Drive. So you can help support our channel with your purchases, rock some cool swag, and everything is designed by us. You won't find those designs anywhere else. So let's talk about the interior a little bit. As I mentioned, we have those black M Alcantara Vaganza M Sport seats. They have blue contrast stitching as well as heat and power options. And we also have a 12-speaker Harman Kardon audio system, dual-zone automatic climate control, a head-up display, BMW's live cockpit, as well as the curved infotainment system running iDrive OS 9. We'll talk a little bit more about the interior when we go on the road. As you can see, it's getting pretty dark behind me. We're going to get hit with a storm any minute now. But I do want to mention, if you are configuring this compared to an X2, the price for a very similarly equipped one is about $1,500. It's not too much. So if you like the look of the X2 a little bit more, you're not going to be paying a ton to get that vehicle. And this is about $8,000 more than the X2 xDrive 28i that we featured. So again, if you're in the market for a smaller subcompact crossover like this, you want something sporty, then the BMW does offer you a pretty good compelling price point, but then it's not going to break the bank to go up to the M Performance model. But I'm getting wet here. Let's hit the road and go over everything else you need to know if you're in the market for the 2024 BMW X1 M35i. Well, I wasn't lying, folks. Look at all that rain coming down now. That I was standing out there a couple minutes ago, and now it's coming down quite a bit, so I guess good timing. Before we hit the road, I want to tell you about my little invention here. This, my friends, is a terry cloth, and this will save your leg if you buy a BMW X1 or X2, because I found, just like with the X2, that these grab handles here, which are also part of the sort of armrest where your controls are for your window switches, they're enormous, and they're also kind of sharp. So I just tucked my little terry cloth there in between my legs. Oh, so much better. That's the only problem. You know what? And I'll save it for right now instead of telling you at the end. I mean, that is the one thing about this vehicle that I just wouldn't buy it. And it's unfortunate because it is a good car. I've enjoyed my time driving around with the X1, and I enjoyed the X2 as well. But this, I mean, I can't have a terry cloth beside me the whole time, just because the armrest here is really sharp and uncomfortable. And it's not just me, my wife, when she sat in the front here as well, in the passenger seat, she found it was also pretty uncomfortable. So, I don't know, I mean, BMW, come on, function over form, please. That's about it. That's the only real, like, serious negative thing, but for me, it is a deal killer. So let me know, have you driven the X1 or X2, and do you find that the armrests here and the grab handle is just too big, or is this exclusively a Nile problem? So before we really get on the road, really wet roads here, let me tell you about our fuel efficiency, because it is interesting. We completed our 100-kilometer test loop in eco mode in 6.2 liters per 100 kilometers. Not too bad overall. How does that compare to the X2? Well, the X2 did 5.7, so about half a liter per 100 kilometers better in the X2. Now, there's two reasons for that. The X2 is a coupe design, so it is a little bit more aerodynamic, and then this has more power. Despite being basically the same engine, having the same amount of torque, because this has more horsepower, almost 60 horsepower more, it just uses up a little bit more as you're driving along, so not quite as efficient. But we did do those test loops about 3 weeks apart or so. Temperature and conditions were pretty much the same, so there isn't anything that changes between that. So just kind of keep that in mind. The X2 is a little bit more efficient. I would have been curious to see how an X2 M35i did, or if we had the X1 xDrive 28i, I think that it would probably be within 1 or 2/10 of a liter between the two of them. So keep in mind that this is the more performance-oriented version. Fuel economy will be a little hindered because of that. But let's talk about the drive ride and everything else, including the interior. I'll touch on it briefly. You know, we talked about it when we did the X2, but obviously you're watching this video, so you have some interest in it. This is the new design language for BMW's interior. We have their curved infotainment display. iDrive works pretty well. We have a smaller screen for the driver, despite the bezel being the same size, but it actually works out, because any bigger, you wouldn't be able to see it past the steering wheel. So I don't mind that being a little bit smaller, but everything so far has worked out well. I do have wireless Apple CarPlay, which is a nice thing to have. 360 cameras come on this one. BMW Drive Recorder. You know, all the stuff that you really need out of a vehicle is present on this. You know, the only real major feature that you cannot get on the X1 or X2 is ventilated seats. You would have to go up to a bigger vehicle in order to get ventilated seats, but you know, it's kind of what you would expect from the Germans, at least. You know, some other brands, obviously, they're going to offer it, but it's just not something here. 12-speaker Harman Kardon audio system works well enough. I've got no complaints about it. It's gotten the job done, and then everything else is pretty good. I mean, nice open space here. The interior compartment is also pretty decent. I mean, you know, I can't fit behind myself. That's to be expected. It's a subcompact crossover, but you know, the seats back there are comfortable enough. Seats up here are comfortable enough, considering they are the sport seats. They wouldn't be my first choice just because I'm a pretty big guy, but you know, they are good enough, and because they are a little bit more fixed, you have slightly less control over how you can position them. You know, I mean, the headrests are fixed and all that, but the trade-off is get the cool light up M logo in the center there, and the M logo is actually on the back, so if you're sitting in the back seats, you're always reminded of it there as well. So I mean, it's what you would expect from the M Performance version of the X1. It's nice that BMW is finally offering it, because the previous generation you had to get the X2 if you wanted to get this engine. So it's good that the more traditional SUV now has that option, because I think that this is a popular seller. It's a little bit more popular than the X2. You know, more often than not, people want to have that extra cargo space, especially if the price difference is a little bit more to have less space. I think that it makes more sense to go with the X1, but this is the one that I would go for. And the fact that you have a couple unique paint options with this car, I think it sets it apart as well. So it's good that BMW has a couple options there. There's some pretty funky colors. which I like. This one, it knocks it out of the park. I like it quite a bit. I'm a big fan of teal and turquoise, and this is a very turquoisey color. I like it quite a lot. So it's a good combination, a good setup here with this press vehicle. But let's talk about the ride and feel of the vehicle itself. Yeah, as I mentioned outside, X1, X2, these are front wheel biased vehicles. Do I notice it really? I mean, I guess so. You have to really be an enthusiast to be able to tell the difference. Your average consumer, if you put them in a vehicle that, especially if it was an identical vehicle, one of them was a front biased, drivetrain, the other one was a rear biased one, most people aren't going to be able to tell the difference. If you're buying a vehicle like this, you want something that looks good, it's sporty, it does have those driving characteristics that you would expect from BMW. You're sacrificing on those small things here, but I don't think that they're a big enough sacrifice to make you want to go up to something bigger. I think there's a compelling reason to buy the X1. And even though this is the M performance vehicle, you would expect the suspension to be pretty firm. It's actually forgiving. I'm impressed by it. We found, especially with the pre-M performance cars, before BMW started making these vehicles, I found that the M Sport suspensions were pretty harsh. You'd hit a bump and you'd feel it. You do still feel it a little bit in a vehicle like this, but for the most part, it works out well. I mean, I'm not too upset when I hit a bump on this. It's pretty comparable to other vehicles, and then you can change your drive modes, which also kind of change the suspension feel a little bit. So in this, because it's maybe going to dry up a little bit, we'll put it into sport mode. So I can click the My Modes button. I've got personal, sport, and efficient. The way that the sport mode is set up here is it turns off traction control. So I'm not going to be doing anything silly in it. The roads are wet here, and even though these are a little bit more sporty tires here, I do not have any interest in making a phone call to BMW and saying that their X1 is in a ditch because the roads were unfavorable for my video. But this whole week I've been driving this car in sport mode. I've had it in sport transmission mode, and in fact I've kept the manual shift mode for the transmission as well. The only downside to this shift setup is the boost mode is also your shifter. So you have to hold down, there you go, you hold down the shift down, woo, and then it'll bring it up, but then it kind of shifts the vehicle down too. So, if you need to use that boost mode to get those extra 13 ponies, 12 ponies, depending on who you believe, then, shifts it down a little bit, but it works out well. I've enjoyed driving it. The paddle shifters, the flappy paddles themselves, they're plastic, but they've got some little rubber grips onto the back, so you can kind of always find them. And the grips are a little different too. They have a different feel to them. So if you're wondering, you're turning the steering wheel, trying to figure out which way is up and which way is down, it makes it a little bit easier to figure that out. So I do like that. And for the most part, the driving characteristics of this car have been in line with what I would expect a BMW M Performance car to have. I would say that this is pretty similar to a M340i or even the M240i that we drove. It's been quite a while now, but it's been a little bit since we've been behind the wheel of any of those, but you're going to be in line with that just as an SUV form. And I think for a lot of people that works out well. I like it. I've enjoyed it. I like the build on this. Please, if you're going to be buying an X1 M35i, please get one of the excellent colors that BMW is offering on this generation. You will not be disappointed. The B-roll might not do this vehicle justice just because it's been pretty miserable here all week. Today obviously is no exception to that, but this color shines, and I would love to see more vehicles in this color. Not necessarily this one. There's a green that BMW offers as well. It's like a pastel green. Ooh, chef's kiss, looks great. Get more colors, people. Stop buying black and white. Get something that pops, because you will not be disappointed. But that's about it for us here on Test Drive. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, we do have our relaunched merch store. We've got some awesome new stuff here. I've created all of the little artworks and everything, so if you're interested in helping support the channel, you can buy some t-shirts and swag, and you can represent it wherever you are out there and show us pictures of it as well. You can send me a message on either Instagram or Facebook, show me your merch, and show me the car that you're wearing it with, because we're all car enthusiasts here. I love seeing what people are driving in our comments there, and that brings us to that. Make sure you leave a comment below if you have any questions about the X1 or anything else that we do here on Test Drive. We always get back to everybody as quickly as we can. I appreciate you watching, and until next time, take care.